Hello, and welcome to Tiffany Markman's Social Media for In-House Teams. This is a mini class that I've created specifically for those who work inside companies and represent brands and want to be able to write better for social media. So unlike some of my other classes, this is not about managing your own social media necessarily or your own profiles that exist under your own name. This is about working on institutional, organizational, corporate, or commercial brands that have social media representation and how to optimize those from a writing point of view, from a value adding point of view, and from a community management point of view. So in this class, which will last about 50 minutes, I'll unpack the key elements of social media management for in-house teams. But first, who am I and what am I doing here? I'm a copywriter, trainer, small business owner, and communicator. I specialize in teaching, among other things, social media writing skills, and this is one of about 22 different webinars that I give on elements of the writing process, all the way from web copywriting and search engine optimization to a grammar refresher for second language English speakers. You'll find more information about me on tiffanymarkman.co.za. So let's dive straight in. Here's what I believe. I believe that social media is ultimately about adding value. And to be effective, social media content needs to give people insights, advice, tips that make their lives better and easier. Social media is not an opportunity to sell, because that is not why people are there. Unless you're on Instagram actively searching for shoes, you're on social media to waste time, entertain yourself, be distracted, engage with other people, but you're not really there to buy anything. And this is why social media content that is relentlessly self-promoting or that is hard sell or pitchy doesn't translate all that well and doesn't work all that well and doesn't yield the kind of engagement metrics or results that you are ultimately looking for. And the reason we want to become known on social media for being a brand or a company or an institution that adds value is because doing this creates a sense of trust. So when you do have a promotional message to share or you have some crisis management to engage in, there's already a relationship of rapport and loyalty created between you and your audience. But you have to build that trust in advance. Unfortunately, you can't build it retrospectively. And so because of that, I suggest an 80-20 ratio. And the 80-20 ratio basically means that of every 10 posts that you create and share on social media, 2 of them should be promotional and should talk about your products and services, but the other 8 should be value adding. In other words, they should give tips, advice, information, how-tos, tricks, tools, techniques. They should be directed to share functional information and value that makes people's lives better. And the reason the 80-20 ratio works so well on social media is because the bulk of your readers are asking, when confronted with a post or piece of content, how usable is it? How relevant is it? And how long will it take me to engage with? So they're always asking questions linked to how much of your time is going to be wasted, how much of their time you're going to waste. And if you can answer these questions up front implicitly, not necessarily explicitly, then your readers are more likely to want to hear from you. Remember also that research shows that today people are using social media to do a variety of things. And as I said previously, they're not there to be sold to. They're using social media to create change, to be involved in something, to create personal significance or to create a personal brand, to learn about their world, share opinions with others, yes, to be entertained, to get a kick out of something, to be distracted during dead time, to be educated or enlightened, and also to connect with others. Now, to buy is not on that list. There's no buying on that list. And so social media really is about being eagerly anticipated. You need to ask yourself, will this information make people's lives better or easier? And secondly, what do my readers need or want to know? So you may think it's very interesting that your company has just appointed a new audit firm, but your readers don't care unless there is some very real, very meaningful implication in that information for them. So you either have to give them information that is genuinely interesting, or you have to find something interesting in the information that you give them. Let me give you another example. Let's say that you have paired up with an amazing company, or that your company has invested in an amazing startup. And as a result, your shareholders will be able to access some kind of benefit. You have to make the benefit to the shareholders very, very clear in the post, rather than the fact that you've paired up with a startup, because the collaboration, the partnership is not relevant to your audience, but the benefit to them is what they want to know. So many writers go off track on this part, especially corporate writers and writers in companies, because what you consider to be news and what's really interesting are two different things. So you either have to tell people stuff that no one else is telling them, or you have to tell them stuff that other people are saying, but in a completely different way. And this is how you stand out in a very noisy marketplace. Be sure that you limit your messaging to a need-to-know basis. So this is so important that I'm going to say it again. Only tell people stuff that no one else is telling them. Or if you have to tell them stuff that other people are also saying, tell them in a completely different way. Now, granted, in social media writing, currency is everything, but so is standing out, because it's super noisy, boring, self-involved, and it's very, very hard to differentiate yourself amidst that noise. So you have to guard against posts that are constantly harping on about how great your brand is, because that is not what social media is for. So what is it for? Well, the research tells us that social media is about focusing on the tasks that people undertake all the time, and about showing them how to make those tasks better, simpler, easier, and so on, more efficient. Now, if you can link those tips to your brand, you've basically won on social media. So here are some examples of things that work. 5 easy ways to keep your kids happy on long drives without iPads. Now, this is an article or a blog post or a series of little nuggets that could work on all social media platforms, except possibly LinkedIn. And it could work for companies in a whole variety of different sectors. So it could be parenting, it could be tech, it could be driving, it could be travel, it could be holidays, it could be, I could go on. Next one, here's what you don't know about roasting the perfect chicken. So people love posts about what they don't know because they feel like you're sharing a secret. So this could be content, for example, that, yes, obviously about chicken. But if you're not a chicken business, this is also stuff about entertaining, parenting again, holidays, celebrating special times with family. You could even do this one during, lockdown for anybody. And if you can find a way to link your brand to really good value adding content that is relevant, again, then you've won. Next one. Are you making this mistake in your work emails? 95% of people are. So people love this mistake secret stuff. Concerned about inflation? Here's some advice from our experts. So this one is really nice because it's got mainstream relevance, whether it's personal finance, financial services, tax, pension funds. You could be in a little accounting firm, you could be a boutique corporate services company, advisory company. An article like this would work beautifully. And then finally, financial well-being. 7 things to discuss with your partner tonight. So again, you can see the potential. Can you see that all of these are very advisory? Now, these would be slightly longer posts, right? Because it's 7 things and 5 ways and 3 tips and all that. But if you think about your posts in an advisory way, then what you do is you make sure that each post is a standalone little nugget that serves this greater topic. And that's basically a summary of my entire social media strategy, which is that I go onto LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and I share small little nuggets of advice. Some of them are part of a greater story, but most of them can just stand alone. For example, I might write, do you know the difference between RACK, W-R-A-C-K, and RACK, R-A-C-K? They actually mean different things, and you're probably using the wrong one. And then I'll just explain the difference. Done. That's a post. So don't overthink it. You really just want to give people advice. Now, this is a very different way for companies and in-house communication teams and social media teams to use content, because you're going for function, not form, and you're being much more hard-edged than you might think. You're avoiding loftiness and fancy notions and abstract and vagueness, and you're going for being practical and relentlessly to the point in value adding. And so once your audience gets used to the fact that you don't share nonsense and that you're not constantly harping on how great your company is, number one, they don't unfollow. Number 2, they don't dread your next notification. And number 3, they might even look forward to an interesting engagement from you next time. The lovely thing also is that if there's a crisis, or when crisis time does roll around, you already have a relationship with them. So you have what it takes to be taken seriously, to be listened to, and you've already started building credibility up front. So there's a sense of legacy creation in giving value-adding content 80% of the time, and promotional content only 20% of the time. You can also, as an in-house content team, ask yourself some questions before you develop your content calendar or content strategy. And these are questions like, what does your business or brand actually do? How does it speak? And how does it speak in writing as well as in speaking? What does it talk about? So what are the things that your business talks about? What does your business want to talk about? So these are not the obvious things. These are the industry adjacent things. For example, if you are a retail entity specializing in DIY and hardware products, that's what your business does. It sells DIY and hardware products to the public. How does it talk? Well, it should talk in a direct, straightforward, helpful, and enthusiastic way. What does it talk about? Well, it talks about drills and nuts and bolts and wood and pipes and plumbing equipment and paint. What does it want to talk about? Well, it wants to talk about all of those things, but it also wants to talk about home renovation and upgrades and keeping your office in a good condition and making small repairs at home. And it wants to talk about style and decor trends, and it wants to talk about outdoor entertaining. And so can you see that there's a whole pile of industry adjacent stuff that is not obvious, but that your audience is likely to be interested in. And it's totally okay for you to share stuff that does not fit perfectly inside your wheelhouse. Also, are there any events during the year that are particularly important to your business or your sector? For example, if you're in financial services, budget time, tax time, and year end are important. So look at the calendar and say, what are the milestones or stages that are happening in the year that I can leverage from a content point of view? And once you've done that, I've put together a quick list here of some of the content ideas that do well on social media. So advisory articles and tips work extremely well. You can theme these weekly or monthly or not at all. You can provide links to high quality op-eds. Op-eds are columns or blog posts, and they can be your own or other people's. Remember that your content does not only have to come from inside your business. You can share content that comes from elsewhere, provided that you cite the source appropriately. You can share questions with your audience. People love responding to questions. If you were a Disney character, who would you be, for example? But I wouldn't use this if you're an accounting firm. Giveaways, if that fits with your brand. You can do snap polls, you can do pop quizzes, you can do short surveys, you can crowdsource input from people. I saw a very nice one recently where a company was creating their annual report and they asked the public what color the cover page should be. Relevant images with captions. Request to like, share, or comment. Please don't do this one too much. Only do it strategically. And then you can share relevant curated content like memes. But again, be careful with humor and stay away from awkward things like politics, religion, and sex. So let's talk about frequency. This is possibly one of the most common things that students ask me. How often should I be posting on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube? Well, I'm going to tell you. Let's talk about Facebook first. So on Facebook, the research shows that once per day is optimal. So your brand should be sharing at least one post per day on Facebook and a maximum of 2. So in a working week, that's 5 times a week, a maximum of 10 times a week. I actually do follow this and it works beautifully for me. So what are the other things that work on Facebook? Well, link posts perform best, followed by image posts and then by text posts. Link posts are posts where you share a link to an article or piece of content and you give an opinion. Image posts are images and text is text only, no images. So that's the descending order. 111 characters is considered to be optimal for producing the best posts from a length point of view. That's 111 letters. 119 characters are considered good and 40 characters are considered okay. So those are all with spaces. 0 hashtags for Facebook. Facebook does support hashtags, but they don't work that well and people tend not to engage much with them. So the advice from Jay Bear, who's the expert on this, is not to bother with hashtags on Facebook. And then a maximum of 1 emoji per post, but only if appropriate given the content. So my students often ask me if they work for corporates or for organizations or institutions, is it appropriate to use emojis? Well, yes and no, it depends on your brand voice, but also emojis tend to work better on Instagram and Twitter than they do on Facebook and LinkedIn. So if you don't feel like you have an emoji-friendly brand, then don't be afraid to stay away from them altogether. LinkedIn, what is the appropriate frequency for posting on LinkedIn? The research says that once per workday is optimal, and a maximum of 5 times a week in total. I follow this to an extent. Yeah, I'd say that I probably post on LinkedIn about once a workday, and probably no more than 5 times a week. So what are the kinds of posts that perform best on LinkedIn? Obviously link posts, because people tend to be more open to reading and consuming more on LinkedIn. So link posts with an opinion prove to work very, very well. Text posts come in second. So this is posts that have no links in them, just a bit of text. And then finally, image posts. So you can see that image posts on LinkedIn are less successful than they are on Facebook. On LinkedIn, you've got a huge amount of space. You can post a post or an article. So you've got up to 2,000 characters, including spaces. But optimally, you want 149 characters. And then the next most successful is 125 and next most successful is 95. So don't go lower than 95. 0 hashtag posts get the best engagement. Now, LinkedIn will push you hard to include hashtags in your posts because it helps their algorithm to serve you content. But really on LinkedIn, hashtags don't work all that well. So Jay Bear says that you can leave out the hashtag and the emoji on LinkedIn. You don't have to feel under pressure to use hashtags or emojis on the LinkedIn platform. Twitter, what is the frequency of posting that works best on Twitter? 3 to 30 tweets per day, spread throughout the day. Now, why so many? Because Twitter is not an algorithmic platform like Facebook and LinkedIn. It's a feed-based platform, which means that new content sits on top of old content, but very, very quickly. And there's a stream of constant contact, which means that if you don't post very often, your brand gets lost in the noise. So if you want to leverage a Twitter strategy for your business, then you need to be tweeting 3 to 30 times a day, evenly spread throughout the day. Image posts perform best on Twitter, followed by text only and then by link. 100 characters, including the link, produce the best posts, which is interesting because you have up to 280 characters now, I think. And yet the optimal results from Buddy Media and Track Social are that 100 characters produce the best posts. 113 characters considered good, 93 characters considered okay. 2 hashtags are the magic number for tweets that engage and get the best metrics, and only 1 emoji if appropriate given the content and or topic. YouTube. This is the one I feel guilty about because I don't post on YouTube nearly as often as I should. Once per week is considered optimal. I post about once a month, which is not nearly often enough. Once per month being the minimum. Yeah. So if you're going to make an effort to share YouTube tutorials and short videos with your audience, then once per week is considered optimal. Here's what else works on YouTube. Now you'll fit 5,000 characters into your video description box. That's a lot of characters, including spaces, but only 157 will appear above the show more button. So I find that a tight 200-word synopsis tends to perform best, as long as Google has at least 500 characters in total for SEO, that's search engine optimization. And why is that so important? Because YouTube is an amazing resource for search engine optimization. It will send your viewers wherever you want. Google loves it, so it includes YouTube results when it indexes search terms and search phrases. And YouTube is owned by Google, so you get very, very cool results for SEO if you leverage the video title and the video description when sharing a YouTube video. So please don't think that YouTube is just about video. That caption underneath, the title and the description, are just as important as what's in the video. And finally, Instagram. This is the one that I neglect the most. So because Instagram, like Twitter, is a feed-based platform, they say that you should post at least once a day and a maximum of 3 times a day. Images are best, obviously, because that's what Instagram is based on. Then live video, then IGTV, and then Instagram stories. 11 hashtags is the optimal number of hashtags, although you can go up to 30. The perfect caption is less than 10 words and contains more than 20 emojis. That's a lot of emojis. And heart eyes, in case you were wondering, is the most popular Instagram emoji. But again, if you're Instagramming on behalf of a company, institution, organization, tertiary education body, etc., I would stay away from heart eyes in general. Okay, good social citizenship. In other words, how do we operate as good social citizens on social media when representing an entity or brand? Well, step one, be transparent. Be open and transparent about your campaign, who you represent, who you are speaking for. Please don't use social media to share secret agendas and be weird. It's going to bite you in the end. It backfires. So try and be as transparent and open and honest and authentic as you can. On social media, because you're in the public eye, it is absolutely critical that you be accurate. Your post should be capable of substantiation. And if you do make a mistake, ensure that you correct it promptly. Always ensure that any criticism that you might make on social media is backed up with rock solid evidence, because you don't want to get canceled. Be ethical. Respect other people's intellectual property. This one is so important, especially their images. Please do not steal images that are not Creative Commons or that are not free for reuse and use them on your social media platform as stock imagery. It firstly isn't good for your brand, but secondly, companies that create images are getting better and better at hunting down their picture that you used unethically and didn't source properly in your social media, and then asking you to pay them anywhere between a couple of $100 to a couple of €1,000. So please don't use images that are trademarked or that are subject to copyright. Be careful with text, images, and photos that are not Creative Commons. So my sort of practice is that I assume that all online content is copyright protected. I will properly attribute any third-party work to the owner, and I will never present someone else's work as my own. And if I'm unsure about who owns the content, then I typically don't share it at all. So please also don't just borrow pictures you find on Google Images, rather use royalty-free pictures, which you'll find on Unsplash, Pixabay, Pexels, and Mazwai. That's M-A-Z-W-A-I. Next up, respect confidentiality. Only reference information that is already publicly available or that you want to become publicly available. Don't disclose anything that's confidential, proprietary to your organization, your clients, or any third parties. And just be careful when sharing information that relates to brand performance, business forecasts, trade secrets, strategic brands, and so on. And then finally, be careful and cautious. So yes, you can up your privacy settings, but social media is public. So you don't really want to up your privacy settings because then your audience can't engage with you. Always start with the assumption that anything you post can be read by anyone, anywhere, at any time, and the internet has a very long memory. So before posting anything, be sure that it's something you wouldn't be upset to see on a billboard next to a highway. And I have a very quick rule for this. It's called the 5 Ps. So never post anything that you wouldn't want a priest, your parents, the police, a potential client, or a pedophile to see. So I'll say it again, the 5 Ps. Never post anything that you wouldn't want a priest, the police, a potential client, your parents, or a pedophile to see. And if I don't want one of those audiences to see it, I don't share it. Next up, let's talk about community management. So what is community management? It's basically the job of being the brand on social media. Now, this may be your job or it may be someone else's job, but whoever's job it is, make sure that the people know what they're doing. Don't just give social media community management to the youngest, most tech-savvy person on your team. That does not make sense and is dangerous. Social media managers are responsible for being the voice of your brand online. They create content, they respond to comments, answer questions, and more often than not, they deal with people who either have a relationship with or have heard of the brand. But community management is not marketing. It's its own role that exists as a niche within marketing. And how do we know this? Well, if you look at what social media managers do in a day, the spread of things that they do will show you that community management and marketing are not the same thing. So 30% of a social media manager's time is spent writing or curating social content. 30% of their time is spent responding to and helping customers. I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. If you are sharing content on social media and audiences are engaging with it and you are not responding to them, Why bother being on social? You are A, losing out on an opportunity to engage. B, you are losing out on an opportunity to talk publicly and have other people watch, because the people who are watching are not always the people engaging. And number 3, why waste your time on social media if you're not going to talk back to the people talking to you? Okay, rant over. 20% of the time is spent strategizing and planning, 10% analyzing past social performance, and 10% collaborating with team members. So there's a lot going on there. None of those are marketing roles except possibly the content writing and curation. The other 70% of the social media manager's job involves strategy planning and service. So again, if you are going to appoint a social media community manager, these are the things they need to be doing. And I want to talk briefly about red flags. So you'll find that on social media, often the content that you see in the comments when people engage back is a whole lot of whining and moaning and complaining. And that's normal. It's not a slight necessarily on your brand. It doesn't mean that your brand isn't liked. Unfortunately, there's a selection bias, because people who are grumpy, miserable, and have too much time tend to be the ones who comment, whereas the people who are happy or neutral don't, because they're busy living their lives. So unfortunately, the comments that you see are very often more grumpy and miserable than happy and grateful. And you need to be aware of that going in, that a fair chunk of what you're going to be doing is dealing with trolls. Now, what I want to encourage you to do is to look out for red flags. There are going to be people who consistently moan and bitch. Just ignore. Unless it's a genuine comment or complaint, don't feed the trolls. But I'm going to talk about how to deal with negative comments that are valid. So it is going to happen. You will receive negative or disparaging remarks. Accept this in advance. This allows you to be prepared. Next step, establish a procedure for handling these. You have to show professionalism and tact. You have to involve the right people. Do not let that staff member with a trigger temper engage with negative comments on social media. If you're not sure where to start, one of the ways that you can handle negative comments is by trying to turn the negative experience into a positive one. Complaining customers are not new. So look to your existing crisis comms or complaints handling policy and try and work out which elements of those you can integrate into social media. Also remember that one of the great things about social media is that it has the ability to help you to stay ahead of the news cycle. You can address the public, you can share the messages that are important to you and your stakeholders, and you can do this as often as you like and as quickly as you like. So there's a lot of room in social media to be responsive and to handle negativity early before the media gets hold of it or it explodes into, cancel culture. Remember that your goal with community management is to make your community stronger. So you want to attract new people to your community. You want to reach out to older or inactive community members, and you want to give opportunities for current community members to engage with one another. So it's really important that you create a positive environment that is engaged and that allows you to ultimately convert your followers through marketing. So keep in mind that nearly 40% of all social media complainers who expect a response expect it to arrive within 60 minutes. That's within an hour. But unfortunately, the research from Hug Your Haters shows that the average length of time it takes for a business to respond is a minimum of 5 hours, which means there's 4 hours in which your complainer is becoming completely enraged. You have to close that gap. So make closing that gap part of your social media strategy. Then, put your empathy for the customer ahead of your desire to fight with them. This doesn't mean that the customer is always right, but it does mean that the customer is always heard. I'll say that again. Putting the customer first doesn't mean that they are always right, but it does mean that they are always heard. Acknowledge that the person is having a problem your business may have caused and show that you are sorry. Then, replying publicly is an important part of handling complaints. Online customer service is 100% a spectator sport. People are watching. So you want to make the hater happy, but the opinions of onlookers are the big prize as well. You want to show them that you care and that you're empathetic and handling things well. What if you respond to a hater and he replies back with something even more negative? Well, here you follow the rule of 2. This is Jay Baer's rule of reply twice. I'll say it again, never reply more than twice to any online complainer in a single conversation. So they complain, you reply, they complain again, you reply, you're done. Nothing will be gained by replying a third time. You've done your part, you're on record, move on. So the rule of reply twice, you respond to a hater, he replies with something even more negative, you reply again, and then you are done. Okay. Nothing will be gained by going down a rabbit hole of complaints with this person. And then switch channels. This is an awkward one because I'm encouraging you in a social media writing workshop to take complaints offline. But some customer interactions are so nuanced that they require research to be resolved. And your goal here should be to switch channels after your initial public response. This is because social media communications are truncated because of the parameters of the platform. So they're much shorter than a phone conversation. And so it could be impossible to address a complex complaint in only 2 interactions. Plus, you may need sensitive details like the customer's account number and so on. So switch channels as early as possible. Take the thing offline, take it to email or phone, where there's an opportunity to share sensitive information privately. Right, quality control. I could talk about this one for hours. So one of the problems about social media writing is quality control. And that's because social media platforms are ethereal in nature. So we write a quick post, we press publish, and then it floats off into the ether. And there it is. It's fluid, it's quick, and deadlines are very, very tight, and turnarounds are very, very tight. So as a result, the stuff that is largely shared on social media is full of spelling and punctuation problems, typos, all sorts of stuff, even weird spacing issues. And the prevailing sentiment seems to be, well, you know, it's quick and it's urgent, so there isn't really time to proofread it. But that is complete nonsense. One of my most frequent comments when I'm marking my students' social media writing exercises in my training courses is, watch for typos, beware of careless mistakes. Watch for typos, beware of careless mistakes. And even when people are doing a course with me and submitting exercises as part of that course, and they're not in the real world, they're in a training environment, there is time to proofread the stuff because it's not incredibly deadline driven. Even then, people make typos and careless mistakes. It really is the most common crit that I give. But it's such an easy fix because there are all sorts of tools that can help you to beware of the evil typo. I'll talk about 3 of them. The first one is Microsoft Readability Statistics. So this is actually built into your Microsoft Word, your Office platform. And you'll find it in the options menu under proofing. And what this does is it's basically spell check on steroids. It gives you a whole lot of insights into the quality, readability, scannability, cleanliness, and clarity of your text. But this obviously only works if you write your posts in Word before putting them into the platform of choice. Hemingway Editor. So Hemingway Editor is a desktop app, not a mobile app. And if you go to hemingwayapp.com, you will find it. You do not need the paid version. You can use the light version. And if you paste your content into Hemingway Editor, what will happen is you'll get a whole lot of feedback on where you've used sentences that are hard to understand, where you've used adverbs or long words when you could have been using short words. It's just the most beautiful free platform for creating writing that is clean and clear and direct and simple. And it will also pick up on spelling errors. And then, of course, there's Grammarly, which is a plugin that you can download. There's a free version and a paid version. Now, I don't use Grammarly because I find the constant pop-ups incredibly distracting, and it really wrecks my flow and sort of wakes up my left brain when I should be using my right brain. But a lot of people absolutely swear by Grammarly if they're not confident users of English grammar and spelling. So the moral of the story is, whatever your proofreading platform of choice, because I want you to beware the evil typo, you need to be check, and double checking. You need to use whatever time is available to confirm the facts, the figures, spelling of names, punctuation. I would even say that if you have 10 minutes to create a post, use 3 of them to plan the post, 3 of them to write the post, and 4 of them to check the post. The checking and the planning are more important than the writing. So you can also, if you're not a confident English speaker or writer, or if you're not a first language English writer, reading aloud is perhaps the most beautiful technique there is for creating social media and blog posts and web content that does not have mistakes in it. So on social media, the posts are so short that you really can read them out loud while typing them into the platform. And don't press publish or send until they sound really good to your ear. Now, why is reading aloud so important, and why does it work better than just looking? Because very few of us, I mean, I am a professional editor, but very few of us are. And the result is that our eyes are not very skilled at picking up errors, but our ears are incredibly good proof listeners. So read aloud and your ear will tell you if there's something wrong with it. It'll also help you to confirm logic, coherence, rhythm, but your ear is a much, much more reliable proofer than your eye. And so you should be reading everything out loud if you're not a very confident writer. That is actually the end of what I have to offer you today. From a content point of view. So there we go. I estimated 50 minutes and I nailed it in 37. But that'll give me a bit of time to talk about what you should do next. So if you have questions based on this little mini class of mine, or you want to ask specific things relating to social media writing, perhaps you have questions relating to a specific platform, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, then please pop me an email on tiffany@tiffanymarkman.co.za. You will find more videos like this on YouTube. My YouTube channel is called Tiffany Markman. And you'll find me all over social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. So if you have questions, please don't keep them to yourself. I would love to hear them. I have much longer versions of this presentation. So this presentation is a 37-minute version of a course that is, so there's a 6-week version, there's a 12-week version, there's a 1-hour version, there's all sorts of different things that you can talk to me about if you want to take this a little bit further. But if not, go back, watch it again, take notes, screen grab the slides that have really, really good stuff on them. And the most important thing that I can share with you perhaps is just try, when using any social media platform, to give your audience value and insight rather than promotional content or hard sell. They will love you for it, and it really, really does pay off in the end. That's me, Tiffany Markman, out.